Hi everybody, welcome back to Thanksgiving 101. My name is Jay Nutt. I'm a longtime chef and a former restaurateur. And if you're like me, this is probably going to be one of these first times you're going to have an opportunity to make less gravy for fewer people. We're going to walk you through step by step. We're going to celebrate Ontario Agricultural Week. We're using all local ingredients where we can. In the pan that we roasted the turkey earlier, I put it on really low heat and I've evaporated off most of the liquid. And what I want to do is we've got some of our stock here, and I just want to skim the little bit of fat that's left off the top of the stock. And I'm going to add that in to our pan. And as the liquid and the juice evaporates, what we're going to be left with here is flavor and fat. And you can see how that's reducing down. All that colorful bits at the bottom that was there from our glaze and there from the juice from the turkey breast, that's going to give us flavor in our turkey and it's going to give us some color. So as that liquid evaporates, what we're going to be left with is just fat in the bottom and flavor. So what we want to be able to do with that is we're going to take some of our onions, put them in. You spend a lot of time cutting onions, don't leave them behind. You're going to put a little bit of your sage in. We're going to chase these around with a whisk. And if you're here and you get a chance when you're doing this at home, this is the part where it smells really good. Right? The onions and the fat and the flavor and all the color off the bottom, the sage, everything combines to make this beautiful aroma. And it's a little bit of aromatherapy. Thanksgiving is a fantastic time of year. So we're going to chase this around a little bit. We're going to give it a little more heat. We're going to let those onions start to cook. Get a little bit of sizzle in there. We're going to take some Ontario white wine. Use your favorite. One of my mentors once upon a time said to me that make sure you're cooking with wine you like to drink. That if you start with a mediocre wine and you put it in a pan like this, and you increase the heat, you reduce it down, you'll have an intensely mediocre wine. So make sure it's something good. Make sure you found it on the shelves that it's got the Ontario label. When you get a chance moving forward, take a moment and make sure that take your own pictures and put hashtags on and share them on social media. Love OntFood and hashtag Ontario Ag Week. So that's ONTAG Week. We're going to let this sizzle and sizzle and sizzle. You can see the steam coming up. And so we're continuing to let some of that liquid evaporate. What we want to get it down to is just the fat and the onions and the herbs left. And then we're going to mix in some flour. And what we're doing there is what chefs will often call a roux. So it's an equal mix of fat and flour. And that's going to be the base for thickening our gravy. So you can start to see this a little bit, that the liquid is evaporating. We've got the onions cooked. The sage smells like $1,000,000. We're going to mix in our flour. When you're making gravy, and it's okay whether you've used a whole turkey or turkey pieces, that keep the drippings, keep the pan, keep all the stuff in the bottom. That's where the flavor that's where the flavor for your gravy comes from. So what we want to do is nice and slow is sort of mix that flour in with the fat and the onions, and you want to make a paste. And you want to make sure that's completely and collectively stirred together so it's nice and even. If you don't take a couple minutes and cook it out at this point in time, you're a lot more likely to end up with lumpy gravy. When we get it to here, you can add a couple ladles at a time for the first, using our stock. If you did it like we did, we cut up our turkey and kept the pieces for our roast, and we took all the bones that were left behind and made the stock. So turkey bones, onions, carrots, celery, a couple bay leaves, some parsley stems, thyme stems, a little bit of sage if you like, a little bit of white wine for flavor. And just let it simmer. Don't boil your stock. That's a common sort of error that people make. But let it simmer, let it draw the flavor out, let it build body. If you want to build that stock in advance, that's one of the things you can do, and then leave it in the freezer. pull it out as you need it. So you can see there we've added about a third of the stock so far, and it's starting to get all mixed in and emulsified, and you can see that we don't have any lumps there. So I'm going to balance that and not lose it, I hope. There we go. So those first couple bits of stock that you put in, do it ladle by ladle. As it starts thickening up, you can increase the heat again. See, I knew I would drop that in. Increase the heat again and start adding your stock a little bit quicker, a little bit more at a time. And because we did it gradual, we took our time, we stirred in the flour and the fat, let it all mix, make that roux, we're not going to end up with any lumps. So I'm going to increase that heat a little bit. You want to bring it up to about a simmer. And that process, once it comes to a simmer, you're going to need another minute or two, sometimes 3. You want to let it cook a little bit because that's what cooks the flour out. It helps develop the binding powers between the fat and the flour, and it's what thickens your gravy. So if you don't cook it long enough, that gravy is going to split. It's not going to thicken properly, and you're going to be frustrated. One of the things you can do, once you get it past this point in time, and it's almost as thick as you want it to be, is we can see here that the herbs are nice and the onions are nice and cooked through. If you want a really silky smooth gravy, you can transfer it into a suitable container and use a hand immersion blender, or pour it into a blender and do it in pulses. Always be careful in a blender that you don't blow the lid off, it's hot. And you can make it as silky smooth as you want. But this way, with a little bit of onions, a little bit of sage, you're going to finish it off with some salt and pepper to make it taste good. And you're going to do that just to taste. So in our case, I'm going to take a little bit of fresh ground pepper. I'm going to take a good dash of salt. And this is one of those ones, you see chefs do this all the time. It's a great flourish, right? But realistically, that little bit was roughly a quarter teaspoon. So it gives it a really good dash of pizzazz if you got your friends and family watching. But, and I just switched that because earlier I dropped the handle in. And you can see this coming back up to a simmer. You can see it starting to thicken. When it reaches the right consistency, taste it with a spoon. Make sure you're happy with it. Salt and pepper a little bit if you need to. Sometimes an extra dash of white wine or lemon juice for some acidity. But set it aside, cover it, put it in a gravy boat, save it with your fantastic Ontario turkey. All right, so once you let it simmer for about 3 or 4 minutes, just at a nice, not quite a boil, but you want to see bubbles breaking the surface. A good way of telling whether or not your sauces or your gravies are about ready to go is dip a spoon in, and you should be able to run your finger across and it should leave a nice clean line in that spoon. So give that a taste, make sure you love it, because you got to know it's going to go on top of the turkey today, and it's going to go on top of the hot turkey sandwich in a couple more days. So we're going to turn that down and just let it cook for a little bit longer, then we're going to transfer it into a gravy boat and keep it hot. We want to close by saying thank you to all of our Ontario producers, all of our Ontario farmers, and the people that raise and grow the food that we eat. So on behalf of us, thanks to them, and happy Thanksgiving.